So most of you probably saw me taking a lap around my job a few weeks ago, and I'm ready to tell my story. I waited because I wanted to make sure it was real. When I tell you this came out of nowhere, and I just was in so much disbelief that I waited until it was finalized to testify. But I'm ready. I'm gonna take you all the way back to the beginning so you can really understand. We're gonna go back to October of 2025. At that point, I had been on my job for almost 3 years, and I just started to feel like I had topped out. I was good at what I was doing. I was the person everybody was coming to ask their questions, and there was nowhere else for me to go immediately. And so I just started considering other options. So I started working on my resume and really trying to hone in because I wanted to make a big move. I didn't want to make a lateral move somewhere else making the same amount of money. As a matter of fact, I wanted to make 6 figures. And so that was my goal. My other goal was to land a new position by my birthday, which would have been March of 2026. So started working on my resume, got some feedback. I only put out a handful of applications because I don't just apply to whatever I see. I was only applying to things that really looked like a good next step for me. And so time goes by, don't get a whole lot of action. The holidays are on the way, and so we get through Thanksgiving, get through Christmas, and then I get an email from a recruiter, and it's a state recruiter, which I've never had anybody from the state reach out to recruit me for a position. So this was interesting. She emailed me and said that she had found my resume online. She thought I was a good fit for this position, and she'd like to have a phone call to talk more about it. And so I'm like, okay. So she sends me the link to the job, and I look at the job and I'm like, this isn't exactly what I was looking for, but I'm intrigued. But I also thought that regardless, I would talk to her. I would take the phone call because you just never know what's going to come out. If you know, have a good conversation, explain more about what you're interested in and what your skills are, she might have found something else, you know. So I said, I'll go for it. So we have the conversation. She's like, yeah, it sounds like everything lines up really good. You know, she's like, they've really been looking for somebody for this position. I think that you should do well if you just go in there and, you know, interview well. You should have it in the bag. And so again, I'm like, okay, great, but this is not what I was looking for. And so I decided to talk to my mom about it. I was like, hey mom, I found this job. Well, this job found me, and it's a pay cut, but they are offering certifications that I really want, and I feel like will put me in a really good position if I can get them, you know, in the next year or so. And so she's just like, yeah, well, you know, I can help you out. And that was not the answer I was anticipating. That is not the plan I was anticipating. I was caught off guard by that. And I was like, okay. And so most of y'all know that my mom lives here now. It all started with this job application. And so had the interview went great, and I start asking my questions just to really find out what I'm getting myself into. And they said a few things that really stuck out to me that kind of felt like, okay, this is God. I asked them about what their training process was, and that's a question that I recommend everybody ask in an interview. Find out what their training is like so that you know whether you're going to just be thrown in there and expected to do a job or they're going to prepare you. And so their answer was that there were some work instructions for certain tasks, but because the team was new, they would be looking for somebody who could create training materials. And I said, bet, that's what I do. That is literally one of the biggest projects I had at my last job, was revamping the training materials. And so I was like, oh, you got it. And they were saying, this is a new team, we're trying to build it out, and so things are still kind of being decided and things like that. And that struck me too, because I recently have come into the understanding that I'm a builder. It's just in my nature to build things, to be a part of the foundation of things, to enhance processes and evaluate. Like, that's my jam. That's what I love to do. Bring organization to chaos. It's me. And so I was not intimidated by it, but I actually was excited about it. And so I walked out of that interview really feeling like, man, this is not what I set out to do, but this feels like a God thing. And so sure enough, they offered me the job. I think my boss was really, well, my current boss, I think she was really surprised, and she was expecting me to at some point turn down the job, but I took it because this is the thing. I talked about this before in a previous blog and live about the will of God. When you pray and when you commune with God, the will of God is not obscure. Transforming your mind, Bible says it makes you able to prove the good, acceptable, and perfect will of God. And so you can know what the will of God is. And I felt like, even though this is not what Kiana wanted, I felt like this was the will of God. And so I was able to say yes to something that was not my plan because God. So they offered me the job. I told them, hey, I have some things that I've committed to at my last job, so I won't be able to start till February. They said, okay, fine. So February 2026 comes. Of course, my team that I left was sad to see me go. They were really shocked, but I did my best to make sure everybody was in a good spot. I did not leave them high and dry, but I really felt like I was leaving room for some of the newer people to step up and really just like grow in their role. And so it was a hard goodbye, but we moved forward. So I started my position February of 2026, and I get there and immediately I'm just like, I don't know about this. This is weird. I was doing some things that I was not expecting to do, that didn't really seem to be outlined in the job description. And so I immediately had questions, but I stuck with it. And so I, moved on. My mom came, we moved in, and immediately I started to realize that this was a bigger pay cut than I was anticipating. I was like, I knew that I was going to be getting less money, but I did not realize how much less. Like, I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to be splitting my bills. It'll be great. It was not great. It was rough. It was difficult. And so I really started to feel bad. I was like, man, I don't know if this was a good decision. It just started to feel like I had missed God completely. And so I have a great mom, guys. Wouldn't trade her for the world. She's always been my biggest supporter, but she 100%, just looked out. Just did not allow me to miss a beat in the midst of this. And she just encouraged me, to keep going. I was like, okay, maybe I just gotta, do a couple more months, pay down some debt, whatever the case. And so moving forward, when I started, there was someone who started a month before me, and we kind of had the same title, but he was doing more project management stuff than I was. But he had some complaints. He ended up leaving in March. And so April 2026 comes around, and they change his position to a higher paying one and advertise it for someone else to basically get more money. And so, of course, I was encouraged to apply for it, but I did not feel the release, and it was ridiculous again. But I was just like, I prayed about it, and because I was just like, why would they do that instead of just promoting me? I don't know, I don't get it. But I did not feel like I should apply for it, and so I did not. And they hired somebody else internal to fill the position. And so I'm like, all right, cool. And then we get to June. In June of 2026, the supervisor that hired me retired. And that's kind of when things started changing again. She told me when I first started that she was retiring, but between her retiring and between kind of the end of the fiscal year, it was just like the work just kind of slowed down. And so then I started to wonder, I'm like, man, like, what am I going to do? And I'm the type of person, I like to work. I like to have things to do. And so I was really concerned when I didn't have enough work to do. And so I started getting antsy, and between the workload and the lack of money, I started looking for jobs. There was a point where I thought I was gonna have to like stop bowling tournaments because I couldn't afford it. And y'all know that is, I've really been putting a lot of energy into my bowling career as of late. And so the thought that I wouldn't be able to afford to go to tournaments was really scary. And I was really sad about it because it's something I love. I know that like that's another redemption story in my life. So I just that really worried me that I thought I was gonna have to step back from bowling. And so I was like, I gotta do what I gotta do. I gotta make more money so that I can bowl. And so I start looking for jobs. Again, very conservatively, I might have applied for a couple of jobs. So then his position comes available from another department, and I was like, and it was a raise. It would have been a raise for me. And so I applied to his position in addition to some external stuff. And so I land 2 interviews in the meantime. We're back in July of 2026 now. I land 2 interviews. I have them. And then I get 2 requests for a work sample. And so I'm getting ready to schedule these work samples. And then, I forgot a piece. Let me go back. I'll come back. The beginning of that week, I made this Facebook post and I said, without context, somebody just texted me, happy newer beginning. And this is somebody that does like a good morning text every day. And she just out of the blue said, happy newer beginning. And I was like, But instead of thinking small of that, I got up and did a dance in my cubicle. I gave him the glory. And at that moment, I decided that I was going to praise God in my cubicle every day that week. And I did. That same day is the day that I landed one of those interviews. They called me to schedule an interview that same day. And so July 31st comes. Well, the day before that, I went to bed really, really down. I was really sad. I had gotten a notice from the IRS and I was scared. And I was just like, I don't have it. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't have it. And so I went to bed really, really down. I was like, Lord, I don't know what to do. And again, I started just doubting. I'm like, I thought I heard you, and I thought I was following you, and this is not adding up. And so July 31st comes, I go to work, and a meeting pops up on my calendar. And so I go into the meeting, it's my supervisor and his supervisor. And they start talking, and they're just like, you know, when we hired you, we said that your position was, you know, still flexible. We were still trying to nail down, you know, your role and the things that you would be responsible for. And they said, we've been working on some things, but we didn't realize how difficult it would be to reclassify a position while somebody was in it. And I was like, okay. And so she continues talking, and she's like, we were trying to get some things together, but we finally got the approval. And, you know, she's like, everybody knows what a great job you've been doing in the last 6 months that you've been here. So we were able to reclassify your position. And with that comes a change in salary. I almost ran out of the room. Not even kidding. So I'm sitting there trying to hold my composure because I had no idea this was happening. And she's like, you know, we put some things together, this narrative together to kind of justify why we needed to change your position. And she said, we'll share that with you at some point, but we just wanted to let you know. And, you know, we're happy to have you. We really want you to know that you're valued and all of this stuff. And I'm just sitting there in complete shock because in my mind, I'm like, I have been applying to jobs. And the crazy part is the 2 jobs that I applied for and that were moving me to the next step still were lower than the salary that they were changing me to. And so she's like, you know, we still have to do some, you know, paperwork on the back end, but in the next few weeks, you should see a change in your check. And that was it. There was no interview, there was no work sample, there was nothing. I did not have to do anything. And she said, this is the best news that I've heard in the 30 years that I've been working here. That is literally what my boss said. She said she'd never seen anything like it. And I knew exactly what that meant. And that is why I had to run around that building, because when you obey God, there evidence has to follow. And I had been praying for evidence. I was like, Lord, I need it to be clear that I serve you, and I need people to see that your hand is on my life. Like, this has to make sense 100%. And I had been praying about it, and I didn't know how it was going to manifest. And so sure enough. And so this is why I had to wait, because in the system, it went into effect on July 31st, and pay periods, all that jazz. And so a couple of cycles had to go through before it actually hit, but it's a real thing. And even today, I was just thinking about how scary. There's a scripture that says that, you know, God is going to perform. It's going to happen so fast, it's going to make your head spin. That is literally what happened. And like, it was so miraculous that I still have doubts about, like, is this real? Like, and I didn't have anything tangible. I didn't sign any paperwork. I just logged in one day and my title was different. And I was just like, I need to go ask them people if this was a joke, because I just could not believe it. I had no idea. They did not tell me, hey, we're going to try to do this. Hey, we're working on this. I did not have a heads up. It literally was happening behind the scenes, and then it happened. And so this is Testimony Tuesday, and I want to encourage you to follow God, listen to him, partner with him, because he can do exceedingly and abundantly above what you can ask or think. And he knows what you need. He's got his eye on you. He's listening. He has heard every prayer that you prayed, and he's not holding out on you. He's working in the background. And so I hope that my testimony is an encouragement to someone who is waiting on God to act on their behalf. He shall. He'll show up. Be encouraged.